Hi everyone, welcome to our today's Plant Postdoc Career Development webinar. Usually in every semester, Plant Postdoc focus on a certain area and organize the webinar on that particular career development program. So in this semester, basically, we're focusing on the career opportunities as a core facility scientist. And for this, actually, we are very fortunate to have some great experts on different areas across the country to talk with us and join us as a panelist today. And I'm Arif Rashaf. I'm actually involved in the Plant Postdoc from the very beginning as a founder. And also I'm a Plant Postdoc working with Michel Facette at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. I will be the moderator for today's session. So first of all, a very brief idea about the structure of today's webinar. So the whole webinar is going to be for an hour. And in this first half an hour, we'll focus on introducing about someone is not hearing the voice. Is my voice clear?
Yeah, your voice is clear to us, but maybe the other person's having audio problems.
Okay, I increased the volume. How about now? Okay, if there is any technical issue, please comment on the chat box. We'll try to figure out. So in this point, actually about the format of today's webinar. So first half an hour will, after this brief introduction from myself, I'll actually pass it to our communication lead to introduce about the Plant Postdoc. And after that, I'll introduce our 4 panelists one by one, and they will have dedicated 6 minutes time to share their experience and opportunities in their corresponding field. And hopefully with that, we'll try to finish the first half an hour, we'll listen from our 4 expert or panelists. And in the second half, an hour, we'll be basically focusing on the Q&A session. But you are always welcome to type your question in any point of the webinar. And in the Q&A session, you can actually raise your hands, unmute yourself, and ask the question and direct it to one of our panelists or the whole panel. So at this point, I'd like to pass it to our communication lead, Ariana Gonzalez Solis, to introduce about Plant Postdocs.
Okay, thank you, Arif, and hello, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me well. I am Ariadna, and I am a postdoc at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where I study membrane trafficking. I'm also the internal communications lead for Plant Postdoc, and I'm going to just describe a little bit briefly what we do in Plant Postdocs. Okay, so as Arif mentioned, Plant Postdoc was founded by Sunil and Arif in 2019, and it started as a community of postdocs working in plant science related fields with the goals to share resources and help each other to find our next career move in industry or in academia. And so in Plant Postdoc, we work as a leadership team from different postdocs in institutions around the US and in other countries. And we also work together with an advisory board consisting of different faculty meetings and members of the industry from different institutions. This has been very helpful for us because they guide us to achieve our planning goals. And also, our journey so far as Plant Postdoc, we have a very successful Twitter account with over 7,000 followers, where we post job ads. And we also have a Slack community with over 300 members, where we chat about job opportunities, applications, and interview process. And we recently got a WeChat community where we already have over 300 members, and it's a very active community. We also developed the potential plant peer review database, and this one is distributed to editors of plant science related fields. And this has been very helpful to help our early career scientists to gain experience as reviewers. As Arif mentioned, we also organize 2 webinars per year where we discuss topics about academia and industry job. We have some other topics about science writing and applications for postdoc fellowships. All these webinars are recorded and are posted in our YouTube channel, so feel free to join and check it. And if you want to be a member of our community, please don't hesitate to contact us. We are always looking for members, and we are always looking for ideas to have our next seminars. So please, here we have the information about our website and our Gmail account. So please don't hesitate to contact us, and we'll be happy to have you as a member of our community. And with that, I'll just pass it to Arif to start our webinar of today, which is about career opportunities as core facility scientists. Thank you.
Thank you, Ariana, for the introduction of the Plant Postdoc. As Ariana said, we are always welcome to join the Plant Postdoc. That is the goal of this platform. So I will start with our first panelist today. Our first panelist today is Yu-Chung Chu from North Carolina State University. So please unmute yourself and go ahead.
Hello, good morning, everyone. I'm Yu-Chung, and I'm currently a postdoctoral researcher at the MESPEC facility at NC State University. We call it METRIC. So I actually, both my master degree and PhD degree, I got it in the US, and then but both of them are from the horticultural science. So before I joined the core facility here, my major research topic is studying the secondary metabolites in the brassica vegetables. So that was my background. And the reason why it led me to right now doing a postdoc in the core facility is that when I was doing a lot of metabolomic study, I found out that with a regular horticultural biology training, I cannot really make a good analysis of the mass spectrum data. And if any of you have been in like a lipidomics or metabolomic science, you would know that the LC mass spec technique is like one of the most important technology that in the metabolomic field. So I feel for me, it's like it haunts me. Like I want to understand more, and that's why I joined the core facility. And there's also some good aspect that what I wanted to learn here, which is a lot of client-facing communication, which is a part that I think is very unique for the core facility position, and then also like a project management and prioritization. And I guess within the whole panelists here, I'm probably the earliest, like the early researcher career. So if like anyone, you're like also from Taiwan or just have any question after this seminar, you're welcome to contact me as well.
Thank you so much, Yu-Chung. I think you are already within the time. So I think in this point, we'll move to our next panelist, Kirk Zimek from the Donald Danforth Center.
Hi, everyone. Okay, so they have, I've been doing imaging, I think, for about 3 decades now. And as I look back over my career, I always remember thinking to myself that I could not predict where I would be 5 years from now. And if you keep that in your mind, you have a goal of what your future is going to be like. I was adaptable, and I followed my passion, which was microscopy. And it turns out that I had the good fortune, and I really strongly believe in the NSF's policies on this for equipment, is that as an undergraduate, as a sophomore, I was able to take a class in electron microscopy in this small liberal arts school. And small class, I begged the teacher to let me in. And then after that, I did a senior honors thesis, and I loved microscopy. And when I finished school, there was a recession going on. And so there weren't a ton of jobs out there. And maybe that wasn't the only reason, but I decided to go to graduate school. And I liked microscopy and imaging so much that I decided to pick a graduate school that had a lot of this, and that was Michigan State University. In fact, the position that I got there was actually as a teaching assistant in their Center for Electron Optics. And so I got to teach for my full PhD students on how to use the technology. So one of the things that I learned as I was doing that was how to instruct, how to put a class together specifically for doing microscopy. I took every microscopy course they had. And it turns out when I was a graduate student, first commercial confocals became available. So I know a lot of you may take those for granted, but the first ones were, I mean, there was no thing called a PC back then. They were all kind of, building their own little computers and floppy drives and stuff to transfer data. And there was another interesting thing that happened in that time is a company called Molecular Probes, which became Invitrogen and Thermo Fisher Scientific. They had a 30-page pamphlet on fluorescent dyes, and now, of course, this is major company. I wish I bought stock back then. So this is my message to you. So then I went there, and then after I was finished, I did a postdoc at DuPont, and so I went now from academia to an industrial settings where, hey, you're going to do work. Guess what? It was a microscopy center. They hired me because of these experiences. And because I always adopted the newest techniques that were coming along, and, because I wanted to solve questions that we couldn't solve in my biological systems. By the way, I did mention this when I was at Michigan State. My degree is in botany, plant pathology. So I typically look at plant microbe interactions, and in particular fungi. So I went to DuPont, I was helping them on some diseases. And then, you're doing your postdoc. A lot of my friends were doing 5 postdocs. Maybe that's still the standard today, it seems, but back then, it was tough to get a faculty job. So I was flexible, I was adaptable. And I think you all should consider that, because I had a lot of fun in my career. And I went and worked for a small startup. Wasn't a startup at that point. It was 25 million in revenues per year. It's called Norrin Instruments. They made a high-speed confocal microscope. I was an application scientist. So they hired me because I had this experience in the lab and operating and practically using these things. And my goal was to help their engineers build better ones, but also to help train the customers. And so I had a lot of opportunity from the beginning of how they actually build these things, to design them, and then going all the way to the customers and help meet their needs. That was a great experience. It was great, but I was traveling. I had a young child at home, so I was traveling a lot, probably 50% of the time. So I decided to go into academia again. So I'm a kind of a hybrid person. I cross these, and you're going to hear 2 more times where I've changed jobs. I went to the University of Delaware for 15 years, and I took this old core facility with 2 25-year-old EMs and basically built it up into, much bigger capacity to serve the institution. I believe in one-stop shopping for imaging, so I would always use super resolution and EM and SEM and confocal, and I would combine atomic force. They were all there in a central spot, so that when someone came in with a question, I could find the right tool or tools to do it. And guess what? They're all digital images. It's just the physics behind how it's acquired, and that's how I looked at it. To make a long story short, I was there for 16 years, became faculty, got funding. I'm one of these core facilities that I enjoy writing proposals. It's not a bad skill to have. And you don't have to. A lot of core facilities just, do their day job and help folks take pictures, but I like straddling these things. And because I had a lot of instruments from a company called Zeiss, they recruited me to actually help them build their global demo center. So when I was done with Zeiss for 7 years, I was the global vice president, and I ran their global applications demonstration centers. A lot of fun. Again, it's really cool. When as a customer, you're like, why did they do this with their microscope and make the software this way? I had an opportunity to influence that up front. Eventually, they were shutting down the office. I decided to look for something else, and the Danforth Center recruited me to rebuild capacity here. I'm back in the plant science, writing grants again. I'm a manager, quasi-PI in the facility. I enjoy doing that. And to be honest with you, I love imaging. If you're passionate about it, go for it. Core facilities are not a bad place to be. I think you're going to hear by the end of today's session, there's a lot of ways that you can go at it. And most thing is to have fun. Okay. All right. That's good for me for now.
Thank you so much, Kirk. We'll move to our next panelist, Karen Fisher from Arizona State University.
As I unmute myself. Hi, I've probably the newest person to this. I've had my current position for about 5 months. But I did my master's and my PhD in a lab that was very microscopy centered. And it being a small world, my graduate advisor knew Kirk while he was at DuPont and at University of Delaware. I believe Robbie would regularly write you and Tim Barrett about questions that he had. So you start seeing some of the same people again and again. But after I got my PhD, I went to work for the USDA for about a year and a half, running their one SEM that they had there. I didn't enjoy some of the stuff I was doing, so I started looking around again and wound up as a research specialist at U of A for about 3 years. My master's and my PhD were working with fungi and working with a pretty large variety of fungi. And at U of A, I wound up working with Arabidopsis, so transition from fungi to plants. And I think knowing how to work with fungi and with plants has given me advantage with my microscopy, just because, particularly with EM, electron microscopy, because they are difficult to work with. Animal tissue is kind of easy compared to plant and fungal tissue. Spent about 8 months at UMass, again, as a research fellow. So 2 of my positions were sort of being the specialized person in a lab for doing either light and electron microscopy or just electron microscopy. It's great. You get to dedicate yourself to a project, but the downside is that you are dependent on a PI's funding. And in the positions that I had as a research fellow and as a research specialist, I could not be a PI on a grant. I could not write my own grants. I was reliant on somebody else to provide funding. And then I found out that Arizona State was hiring, which is where I did my master's and my PhD. And it was kind of a weird feeling to basically be coming back to and running the facility where I had done all my graduate research. So I am in charge of the life sciences EM facility here, along with one other person. It's kind of a unique situation here at ASU because at a lot of universities, material science, chemistry, physics, life sciences, or biology will each have their own EM facility. Here, about 4 years ago, they got rid of those distinctions, so we're all under one umbrella. So I work with about 20 other people that all have electron microscopy related skills or skill sets. So it gets interesting sometimes because I'm collaborating with physicists and material scientists. I will have chemistry people come over and ask about using the ultramicrotome or how they can section their samples. But it's, I guess, one of the big advantages with being part of a core facility is you're a little bit more stable funding wise, especially if you're part of a larger core. Yes, you need to make sure that your facility is busy so you can keep funding the electronics that you have. But the nice part with my current position is I get to pursue some of my own research as well, along with helping other people with theirs.
Thank you so much, Karen. At this point, we'll move to our last panelist, Veena from the Donald Danforth Center.
Thank you, LAN postdoc team, to invite us all from our behalf. And I would like to start with, where I came from. I came from India, and I decided to come to US after my PhD as a postdoc. So I did my master's, did my PhD in New Delhi. And the work I did for my PhD was in functional characterization of a gene which happened to be critical in abiotic stress tolerance. And when I did that work, I utilized plant transformation technology to generate transgenic plants to demonstrate their function. And that's what excited me to pursue my career or where I stand today. So how Kirk and everybody is mentioning here is, follow your passion, do best you can. That's what is your strength. So play with your strength rather than something weak or that looks cool. That's why I want to do that, or that particular job have a lot of money. But if you don't have a passion or knowledge or expertise behind it, it is not going to be sustainable. So one point I want to make. And I see many of you here. I'm trying to read the name, and I feel that you may be going through the same journey as I went decades ago, and it's the visa. And so I was also transitioning from one visa to other visa. So if I am on J1, I am on H1, it's not easy to get the job in industry. And I was not looking for that. I was looking for expertise in plant transformation technology. That's what I was very passionate about. So I came to Purdue University, worked with the expert in agrobacterium biology. And so that was still the foundation of where I stand today. And that helped me a lot in 6 years into that. So I did extended first postdoc, and then I ended up doing the another postdoc, which was at the Danforth Center. So I did, in total, you can say 9 years of postdoc. And then at the same time, I was transitioning through the visa process and all those things. But this experience still valuable because I was able to publish, I was able to hone in on my skill set. And that's what led me to get the opportunity in Monsanto. So now it's called Bayer. And when I went to Bayer, I was there as a senior scientist, worked on various capacity. For example, development of high throughput assay system, work with various functional teams, agronomic traits, regulatory trait integration, technology acquisition, business strategy, and so on. And so I understand you all are postdocs. We are so passionate about the research we do. But when we think about industry or even the core facility, it is about clients or the product development. It's not about me per se, it is about industry. What is the goal or core need for that business? So if I think about, I love this thing, it's so cool, the outcome is coming cool, but it doesn't fit the business strategy, they're gonna drop it. And then me as a postdoc at that scientist mindset, it was very hard for me to find a piece with that thing. Why they dropped this project? Why we cannot continue this project? And so I took it upon me, and I ended up doing MBA after a long break. And I pledged after my PhD, I'm not going to study or go take classes again, but I did. And that was the best thing I did for me because it helped me with my current job quite a lot. And so it was very helpful because it helps me find the balance. It gives me the focus for the clients, centric approach, and all those things. So that being said, couple of things. Other thing I want to mention is currently I am working in a hybrid mode. I run the facility as a director of plant transformation facility. Our goal is to offer these services as a access to equipment or access to the full service for PIs who have projects to generate transgenic plant or need for the genome modification technology. And I am also serving as a PI and then do my own research, write my own grant. So I am satisfied both sides in many ways. And then Kirk and I are in St. Louis. Our area, our region is very blooming in terms of small businesses. So we support our region by helping new businesses coming to our region. So we, beyond our role, we also help local community and local economy that way. So this platform offers us very extensive role to support the community, because if I do a research, it stays in the publication, it doesn't do much more if it is not utilized by somebody. And so this is about the basic, the foundational thing. And what I would like to say about the career is that, you got to know what you like to do. If you are wanting to do your research and very passionate about your own career development, it takes you to one path. And then whatever you do, you stay passionate and then stay flexible and adaptable because you never know where the next opportunity is going to come from. And then open to new things, try new things. There is no lowly job because you never know how it can help you connect to new people or new opportunities, because people need to know what you're capable of. And then many times you are saying that writing in a resume doesn't help. So networking. And then how you network, it can come in a funny way. And then opportunity comes like that. And then the difference between TI lab versus, facilities operations and industry is, your independent work, your focus in there versus the teamwork. And you got to be very clear to understand your needs and where you find the satisfaction. And then facility operations are very process oriented. And then you have to repeat same thing again and again unless it becomes perfect, because that's how it becomes cost effective. So at the end of the day, that operation needs to be sustainable. So many times if you get bored of the repeated tasks, then that job is not good for you. And so you got to understand that. And then today it doesn't look good to you. Maybe 10 years from now, it will be perfectly fine. So there is nothing that today I don't like it. It doesn't mean 10 years from now or 5 years from now or 3 years from now, it will not work for you. And then I believe somebody mentioned about client-facing communication, very important, prioritization, and then expertise, time and resource management, because it ties to the revenue generation. And then when you are at the critical stage, you are looking for your future goal, future direction. So networking is important. And when you find something really cool, please don't burn the bridges because you never know when you need to come back. So with that, I'm going to pass on back to Art.
Thank you so much. It was really informative. So I think at this point, we want to thank all of our panelists to share the experience. And if you have a question, please go ahead and unmute yourself or ask that question, or you can type in the chat. In the meantime, I want to start with one simple question. Usually, in case of the core facility, we mostly know the directors and the higher up people. But what are the other career stages in case of the core facility scientist?
I think I can speak based on me being a postdoc and the only postdoc right now in my core facility. And I really, as an early career stage researcher, I fully support all of the experienced core scientists like Davina, Kirk, and Karen, what they were saying. And so it just based on our core structure, we have the mass spec parts, we have the NNR parts, and then we also have the X-ray parts. So in addition to the director level, we actually have a senior researcher or like just research scholar, like for like the permanent position. And I'm the postdoc, which is like a temporary position. And so, and also there will be some HR people involved. And then in our case, we kind of share the HR person with the biochemistry lab. And then also there can be like a lab manager. And it depends on, I'm guess depends on the different direction which each core is going. Like the structure will be a little bit different, but I wanted to add on one thing after I listened to all of the great information shared by Karen and Vina is that I think it's working in the core facility. One thing you will have to ask yourself is like how much initiative you need to take. Because the reality in the core facilities, like majority of the time, it's like for me, like I'm very entry level, like, we are being assigned project and then we work with a different PA. And that's actually how I know the Plan Postdoc, because that's how I know Alison Baum, which is another member of the Plan Postdoc. Like she's basically my client where we kind of become good friends. And for me, the most important thing is like the whole process. So like I do a lot of method development here, either from the sample preparation to the data acquisition on the mass spec side. And then like right now, I know a lot of instrumentation part, which is, I think usually the regular biology lab will not have that chance to know that kind of thing. And that can be very important, but that may be not that important for you. So like they were saying, it's important to ask yourself, what do you like? And then are you okay if you are not the main driver of a biology focused project? Like you are more like a provide assistance. But for me, I like that because like, I like what we're doing with the analytical aspect of the things. And then I really like to touch a lot of different research projects at a short amount of time. And then while I came from the plant background, a few of my projects have plant, but I also work with them. Like at this point, I have a project experience with the cells, with the mice, and then all that kind of thing excites me. That's why it brought me to the core facility, because I know for me, I like a very applicable approach of the science. And then I like to know a lot of people and then work with different students or PI and then know a lot of research field. So that's the good part of that. But the downside of that is like, one or two projects, because we are only part of the project, is relatively difficult to know, like to go very, very deep of one project, which will be for me, this is how I feel like you will understand the biology part of that, like compared to my analytical chemistry scientist here. I understand the biology of a lot of project here, just a lot more because all my background training was in biology. And that helps with the communication. But I also spend a lot of time, like, learning the analytical parts. And so I think it really depends on you if you like it. And then sometimes, like, the senior researcher here, they also involved in grant writing. The postdoc, I don't think I have been involved, but I think this is a good hybrid mode. That's why it brought me here. It's kind of an academia setting, but kind of industry setting away. And probably Vina, at least Vina will probably agree with me. And then you just need to ask yourself, is something you like? Because the task you are doing every day is very different from the regular lab. At least say the research, like the permanent position research scholar in like one of the PI lab, what I'm doing and what they are doing is very different. And I think it's good to, as an early stage scientist, I come into this kind of seminar and then kind of understand what's the difference.
Thank you. Anyone wants to add in this point, like different stages, career stages in the core facility?
I'll make a quick comment. It really depends on the institution's positions a lot of times. I've had instances where, if you're the only one in your core, maybe one of the job possibilities as a postdoc is that they have some, department that has a couple instruments and they want someone to manage it. But if you're successful and you grow and you get other equipment, then you can add people. I wouldn't recommend a postdoc having a technician job, but there's always a technician who will be coming in and helping make reagents and doing some more basic things. Most of the places that I've worked, I would generally have a research associate position. These will be people who have experience in a particular technology, like confocal, for example, and they'll help with the training and sample prep and some of the work. In some institutions, they'll have a research associate 1, 2, 3, so there's a career track for you. In other more advanced positions, I would have like a staff scientist in here. Now, the nice thing about a research associate is if you don't want to write grants or be involved with them, that's not any part of the requirement. When I start getting, scientist level, then the expectation or one of the job requirements may be that you're writing proposals as part of your work. So and of course, when you have a staff scientist, there's assistant, associate, or whatever, oftentimes. So I just wanted to make those types of tiering. It's going to be institution dependent. Depends on the size of the core facility that you go after and so forth. But I just wanted to make those comments. There's a lot of options for you.
Can I add one more thing, Arif?
Yeah, please go ahead.
As Kirk said, it is institutional dependent, and then academic institute, we don't have a big staff or big group. So we got to understand that compared to the big industries. And so there are a lot of options, you can move one place to other or all those things functions to other. But when you are in academic core facility, there is very limited. It could be flat, or even if it is hierarchical, it feels like stuff. And so over the years, so one advice for people who take that, care about what you do, what you deliver, and what is the value you are offering to the job compared to the title. And then especially in the industry, it's very important. If you get hung up with the title or a very specific niche where you say, I'm not going to be flexible, it is going to hurt. It will impact your efficiency and then happiness in that workplace. And so very important to be very clear and then get the expectations clear when you get the job, understand what it is. And but it is what exactly you do rather than this title. You can be queen of anything. It doesn't matter what you do. That's what matters.
Thank you again. Asif Ali, you had a question. You can unmute and ask the question. I can actually read the question, but question is not very clear, so it is better. Okay. There are some questions from Jaspreet. You can unmute and ask that question, please.
Hi, everyone. So I think I have a couple of questions. So one thing is that, are there any internship opportunities? Like, industries do have internship opportunities, but some people, like, they don't really want to go to industry, but they still want to stay in academia, but they're looking at alternative career options, right? And so I'm just wondering, like, if there are internship opportunities, and I think you already covered about entry-level jobs. And I think last question I had was whether the opportunities which are available with these core facilities, whether they are highlighted by universities on their like career fair kind of events, because industry jobs are highlighted over there. So those were my two questions.
Any of one of you can go ahead, please.
I can answer just based on the micro facility experience. So we do have internship. I actually have one intern, which is a PhD student here working with us, and then we are like, so this student has some knowledge based on the LC med spec. So that's part of the reason why we think it's good for internship. And I think so. I guess it is really facility dependent, but for us, we do, and I do think it's a good opportunity for like a student to kind of know. And I don't know if we're being highlighted at the career fair, but like we always trying to be involved in the different like departmental department, not party, but different gathering. And then like for currently we are like hiring, so we always want to show our face. So I think you can try to see if your portfolio you have fun, and if they don't have anything written on the website, maybe you can even write an email to like the director or the scientists. Like sometimes they may be able to make something because they may be just still thinking, or things are not being pushed online already. Yeah, so I think it's good to take initiative and reach out to ask.
I don't think we have internships here at ASU. However, I know that with both here and with a lot of universities, hiring is sort of either word of mouth or a lot of stuff up on social media like Twitter or LinkedIn. And again, just if it's something you're interested in, reach out to somebody at the core facility and ask. I mean, emailing people is, although it feels scary at times, usually the best response to, or best way to get a response from people. And sometimes if they don't know if they're hiring, they may know somebody else who is.
Make a comment. So when we have internships in the Advanced Bioimaging Laboratory here at Danforth Center, they're generally for undergraduates and for the summer duration. And that's for the thing about those is they're typically funded support from the NSF or another grant that we have on there, which is of course different than an internship where you're going into an industrial setting. I do know that when I was at Zeiss and DuPont, there were summer interns, and sometimes they would come into the laboratories, but those you have to, go to the institution or sometimes know somebody to make those available. If you're interested in jobs, for example, the Microscopy Society of America, if you want imaging, for example, there may be an equivalent. They have a job posting, which generally has lots of positions out there. To be good at, one of these techniques, because a lot of people put that they have microscopy experience on their CV. And it's more of an in passing, they did it for a few months on a project, which is fine, because sometimes I need someone who has any experience in here. I just want to make one other comment. I've put job postings out where I can't actually find somebody who has a qualified experience in training. In fact, these days, most of the academic institutions, because it's expensive to do a training course for microscopy, and there's usually low throughput for students, it's not as common. It's still there. So my comment to you is that having formal training is an advantage when you want to get into a core facility. But in a job that I hired last year, I could not find someone who wanted to do electron microscopy, had the experience. So I actually am training a PhD. She didn't do her postdoc. She came straight in from her PhD from the beginning and into that position. But my comment is to internships, a little bit trickier. Generally, they'll be earlier for a postdoc level. Maybe even, if you had a chance to work on it while you're a postdoc, you might get into still in the laboratory to get even more advanced experience and, more, I guess, longer duration. Because there's a lot of energy to become really good at these, to be really good at this, to be able to support in a core facility advantage center.
If anyone
Yeah,
doesn't want to add, so Rajiv, go ahead and ask your question.
yeah, I think some of my part is answered by the Craig, but I would like to know about the hiring process in a core facility. Like, what is the application packages and what you look for? Like, as a PhD or postdoc, we work with the many more techniques, right? Like microscopy, metabolomics, RNA sequencing, and even transformation. So we do all the things for some of the projects. So what do you decide I am a good fit for what, like how long experience I need to have in a particular field? Let's say for the transformation facility, do I need to have 4 or 5 years of continuous transformation? Do I need to generate 50 transgenics or something like that? Or like for a PhD or postdoc, we work on a goal or we work on questions, right? That needs multiple techniques to be utilized. So how do they judge whether I am qualified for that position or not?
Hey Rajiv, I'm gonna answer and then somebody like Kurt can answer. Karen.
Yeah, sure. Thanks.
So you mentioned, transgenic plant. If somebody says 50 transgenic plant and they are part of the institution who have the core facilities. So for example, you were postdoc at the Denver Center.
Yeah.
And then in a PI lab, and then you ended up using the core facility to generate your transgenic plant. So many times I see the resume claiming they have the transgenic transformation experience. Technically, they did not, because when you start asking questions, how you really transform something, they have no clue. And so that's why, what you write, especially for the core facilities, so there is one thing about the theoretical knowledge, which I can tell and I can bet that people are really good at it. But when it comes to execution, the core facility operations are all about troubleshooting, efficiency, impact, timely delivery. So there is, so that's why there is a distinction between the two. And then it comes with the time, but the thing is, it doesn't mean necessarily you cannot be fit for that role. It is how you approach it. What is your approach? So it's basically for me, are you gonna be a team player? How much you care about the project, any project coming to your hand versus it is my own project. And then if I have A, B, C project, I like B more. So I'm going to give more to B because I do not care about A or C. And so those are the things, so it's kind of soft skills people talk about. Those are very important here. And then be honest about, when you're talking about it, but, how you can share your intent of being part of the core facility. So it's going to come down to more there. So Kirk, you want to add something?
Boy, I probably hired a couple hundred people in my career, and this is always an interesting question. I would make a few things for you. You know what impresses me first is that I actually get a specific letter that comes along with the application that is specific to our institution and highlights why they're enthusiastic for the job. I get a lot of letters that are, they don't go, I don't even have an interview with them where, so, you know, if you're spamming applications out there, because I know a lot of postdocs, I have friends I'm writing letters till I'm blue in the face of support. Be really thoughtful about those letters and be specific for that institution. So that's number one that I would actually highly recommend, because that will stand out from everybody else's letter and saying, I've been doing it. And I like the cool things, you know, look into the person who's making that decision and saying, I've been, you know, try to be personal about it. So that's number one. Number two is, remember, when you're applying for a position, you're competing with other people that have some of the skills. And a lot of times I would say, you know, only 10% of the applicants that I have will actually have all the required, you know, and maybe it's even less than that. But if you don't get a call back, it might be that someone is just has more qualifications. Not that you're a train wreck or disaster, don't take it personally. But a lot of times we have to make a short list on here. But, you know, as I was thinking back and when I was writing these, you know, these applications, the things that'll get you in the door, you know, be honest, be enthusiastic during your interview. You know what I normally do in an interview? If I'm not sure because of the person's quality, because a lot of people will put a publication that they did confocal or, you know, transformation or mass spec. I actually started asking them questions about what is refractive index, what's the numerical aperture of the lens, can you describe it to me, what are the conditions that a plant would make it difficult. If the person stumbles on that, they just haven't had a lot of experience. Now I can make a decision that they're still the most qualified person and I have to train you all of those things, but it tells me where you are. The third thing is, in your interview, please come with some questions that if they ask you, do you have any questions about our institution? You know, put a little thought into it. I also, the best people that I ever hired, they did a lot of whatever microscopy technique in their PhD thesis, because then, you know, they did the work themselves and it wasn't part of a large. Publications are terrific. Please do that. It shows me that you're a productive person. But also, if you happen to have a thesis to use that technique a lot and you're interested in it, I actually can check the quality of your work. You know, in a publication, it's like one picture and then everything's in, you know, postage stamp size and so forth. At least that's my experience. So I hopefully, if you pick only two of those things that I said, they might help in some of your applications to stand out.
I have a few things to add on. So if because when I'm interviewing my current position as a postdoc, I wouldn't say I have any actual mass spec experience. Like I'm one of those 90%, like Kirk just say, probably doesn't have the exact experience, but because I have the application side experience, which I do metabolomics a lot during my PhD. So when I was interviewing, when I was preparing the slide, I'm trying to. So you're thinking at least with the mass spec and LC mass spec, it's a very analytical. So when I prepare my presentation, I try to focus on of course, in the regular research focused web presentation you prepare, you usually go what's the question, right? And they know what's the goal. But for us, and then I also in other interview, they really care about the process. So for example, if you choose this method, why? If what type of the instrument you're using, you actually show, that for in my case, we are using, I was using Thermo's Q-Exactive mass spec, show those different analytical things in your slide or during your interview. Sometimes let them at least know what you're doing. And one of the most the difficult question I got during my current during my recent interviews, they directly asked me, okay, so you say you have done a HELIC, which is the hydrophilic chromatography, and so can you just briefly explain to me what the HELIC is and then how did you usually do that? So I feel as a PhD student, before it was you kind of focus on the research question a lot, and sometimes we will always think, oh, those techniques is a tool for us to solve our research question, which is totally true. But when we are in the core facility, I'm sure either the microscopy or like blend transformation, or like me in the mass spec, those tools right now are our major focus. So if you switch your point of view to that, oh yeah, those are my major focus right now, and then you will be more mindful of what you are presenting on. I hope that kind of help with what your question you were asking.
One thing I quickly add, one thing is you got to know the facility where you are applying, understand what they're doing. For example, you go and apply for first facility and you say something which they don't do, it is not gonna connect. And then you have to communicate why you will add value to Kirk or me or my facility, rather than if you come and say, I want to do genome editing to improve the disease resistance, it doesn't help me because I can get all kinds of projects. And so it's not this or that. And so it's not about you, it is about the operations. And so if you send a message like that, it is, basically it tells me two things. Once this person don't understand difference between facility versus PI lab. And also this person care about their own thing, which is not bad at all, but they are better fit for the PI lab versus facility.
I would definitely say, be honest with your skill set. Yeah, I mean, and give examples of what you've done. If they're looking for somebody to do something that you're interested in, but you don't know that much about it, be enthusiastic about it and talk about how, hey, you might not know this yet, but the current skills that you have will translate well. I mean that, if you're willing to learn stuff and show that you're trainable, that goes a long way.
Awesome. I think Jaspreet, you can go ahead. And
Yeah,
answer.
I guess my question was sort of related to, the discussion. So, like in the job advertisement, there is required skills and desired skills. So sometimes you feel like, okay, out of like these 5 things listed, I have, 4 on my resume, in which I consider myself proficient in some of them, but, beginner in some of them, right? So, but then you also cover like some of the desired skills. So I think my question is like, is it okay to apply for a job like for which you don't cover all the required skills? Like, let's say you cover 70% of required skills, or do you think like by sending that application, you're just like, spamming the person like who is hiring? So I don't know, like if that could be considered as like rude, like, just sending an application when you don't cover entire set of skills.
I want to take a stab on it. And then I like somebody's honest. So you can explain, as Kevin said, that you explain that you don't know, explain that you understand, but show the desire to learn and be trainable. And so if I can hire somebody, I want it to be mutually beneficial because you're helping the facility to grow. And then if you don't know something, it helps you grow too, because you learn that thing rather than me or director using you as a pair of hands. And so that is the best. And if you know only 75%, it's a good place to be. Even 50%, it's a good place to be. And let the other side decide they want you or not. That's not your job, I would say. Apply and don't take it personally.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely apply. You have no idea how many other people are applying for this position, or in some cases, how long it's been open. I mean, and I shouldn't say desperate's probably the wrong word, but they may really be trying to find somebody. And if you have the right personality and a willingness to learn, and you've hit, as said, 70% of like what they want, you have a good chance of getting an interview. I mean,
I agree. It's put the required on there because we're hopeful. But when the job market was tighter, for example, in the last year or two, it wasn't possible. So then what we're looking for is the one who can fill the most. And again, you just don't know. I mean, I believe me, spamming. I get spammed. I get people who are taxi drivers and stuff. If you have 30, 70% of the skills, if you have 25% of the skills, you're not spamming. And again, I think that they keep making the case and saying, well, I don't have this experience, but in this particular thing that you're saying, but I've read it with interest and I'm an enthusiastic learner, and then we'll kind of drill down if we get you in on the invite. So I think it's definitely worth the risk.
I want to give an interesting example, so that like very quick example. So there was a person who was working in bakery. Okay. So it's an example that truck driver, how they can get a job in a science industry. So she was working in a bakery. She was so good in bread packaging. And then where she got the job is in a media lab, because they were making thousands and thousands of Petri plate and packing. And she brought a lot of new perspective on how to pack it and then things like that. And then bakery is also a chemistry lab or in some ways. And so she turned out to be a good fit, but kind of task she did, it was not like very, if you are in industry, if you are in a facility, there are SOPs to follow. And so you're not doing you are executing a given task perfectly. And so I just, I was very fascinated by learning that, and I would not have thought about it, but it changed my own view on how you can be surprised by other people's skills. So it's very interesting times.
As you're coming to the end, like there are some questions you got from the participant during the registration. So one of them was actually regarding how the grant system work for the core facility. So usually in the typical grant system, there are money for the instrument and also for the people. So is in the core facility, is it more focused on the instrument versus people? If you can share some on that question.
I mean, I can respond to this because I've written a number of imaging proposals and so forth. So number one is when you go after the NSF or the NIH or the USDA, actually salaries are not fundable with those instrumentations grants. And there's larger center grants where that's not the case, where you can get support. But if you're going just after an instrument grant, they would be without salaries. However, almost all of those grant mechanisms require you to demonstrate institutional support. And that's a huge part of getting funding on these proposals. They don't just want to give you a piece of equipment that's going to drop into the lab and not see that salaries will be covered in some way, or the service contract will be covered in another way. It turns out that I was helped create an international survey microscopy course. And about, on average, microscopy cores get around 40 to 50% cost recovery. And so that means the institution is supporting these in a large extent. And it's feast or famine sometimes, depending on which institute you work with, okay? And whether you're under pressure. But I would tell you that in the ideal world, I would get 100% cost recovery for the charges that I charge, the instruments that are being used to pay for the service contracts and the salaries, okay? So my comment is, and this is actually one thing, and I think Veena mentioned this in the beginning, whether you're running a laboratory or you're running a core facility, for example, and again, you don't have to be the manager of the core facility, but if you you become a manager, you're running a small business. And if you're really interested in this, go take some business courses a little bit, just so that you understand that they even have classes for core facility management that actually in Chicago, there's some classes there. So if you really are into that, even if you get into an institution and you don't have that experience, oftentimes they'll budget for you to go out and do that so that you become, better at your job and more efficient. And I would tell you that just like trying to get grants all the time, in which I do both. So I actually hedge, okay? I can get funding to support my center from a grant and the indirects. And then I can also, they come into our institution, but then I also get revenue. That way I've always been in this kind of a hybrid position that generally reflects well to my bosses. But in the end, my comment to you is the biggest thing if you go in the core facility is customer service. You know, don't make a commodity where you're just going in and you're just providing. I mean, some people just all they need, but try to help them solve their problem. And that's what you were trained to do. That's why you have this postdocs and you have all this training and these expertise. You're a problem solver. You've demonstrated that. Help them do that. And if they become successful and they spend money in here and you help them get a result that is, you know, a proper result that was carefully considered and your expertise helps shorten the learning curve, because most people coming into my center have very little imaging experience. They depend on us. If you go to a mass spec center, they're going to depend on you. If you go to think about that, very service oriented, and you can be successful. But you, from the funding perspective, almost always it's institutional support. It's very rare that you'll get full funding just off of the revenues, but you do have to care a lot about it. That's what you're being tasked with every year.
I think receipts is always I don't think issue is the right word, but like how many receipts we got is always like always being brought up in the end of every like a fiscal year. And then my understanding is that for the mass spec, like currently we may have like at least like a 4 to 6 like a pretty high end Orbitrap, which is like a thermal mass spec, and then each one of them is 1 million. I don't know the cost for like the microscopy or like the transformation, but like I know for us, we will never even make it even because the instrument just like way too expensive. But I think what Kurt was saying, like I completely agree with him, because like you kind of need to make sure that we have the institute support. So usually we don't necessarily worry about the money that much. But that being said, like if you are someone who like to be the not necessarily solo player, but you just kind of need to be like helping people. So for example, the client like Ellison, who's not here, I really like to work with their project, and then we work on together, and then we contribute my metabolomics mass spec experience, they contribute their biology experience. So we even have a publication in PNAS, which as a horticultural scientist, I never thought about I would have any publication in PNAS because we were so like applied. And I'm not doing like a tomato, those like a model crop. So that part is like I like the most. So you just really like to work with the people. And then I think that's the key qualities that when we are looking for, since recently we are hiring as well. So I can see some candidates come in, they have the great qualification, but the personal skill just not there. They're mainly, I think in some way, if you really want to become a research PI, you want to drive everything, you want to make every decision on your own, I don't think the core facility will be the right place for you, regardless of the funding situation, the job stability wise. But yeah, that's my comment.
Thank you so much. We are just a few minutes over, but there is one important question we got during the registration, like about how the publication works. If someone collaborates with the core facility, do they still have to pay? And on that case, like, are they going to be in the author list? I think this is kind of a burning question every time people think about. So we want your comment on that. And with this, probably we can end the webinar, please.
It depends. So the authorship would depend on if the method is already established and published, and then there is, acknowledgement to the core facility that work has been supported by that, there is no authorship needed. And then if it was intellectual contribution, unique perspective, then it is better to communicate to the client. And then it is, your agreement with the client, how it would be. Even as a postdoc with your PI, you got to do that, and it's same. And then you got to be aware about this thing. And then whether there is going to be patent, you got to have the name in there or not, and why and how. And then if you know early on, you can change your strategy if you want to be in there. So, remember, you got to ask, you have to be your own champion to get what you want. Okay.
Thank you. Anyone wants to add on that?
Some of it will depend on the work done. I mean, obviously, if you have a user come in, just use the core facility, you give them a few pointers. The main thing is they're going to acknowledge the core. If you are putting in a significant amount of the work, like having to do the sample prep and analysis, then you should be listed as an author.
Oh, I think I can add on, like, so when we were doing the in the very initial consultation, we kind of walked through this with our client, and like they were saying, like depending on the work, and then also when we are trying to make the website, we have like the policy, and I actually I was like referencing the authorship guideline from Denver. Because I was like, I have friend working there, so I know there's also like a proteomic core there. So, but basically, it's kind of case by case, and then it did like let's say if you have contributed a lot, for example, like the project I work with the client here, like my data helped them to get a 1 million grant. I think I'm deserved on the authorship. I won't be the first author, because they are the one generating the research idea, but all of our support is the reason why they can get a funding. But that really comes down to communication. And also, if this is a client facing job, if your client is happy, usually that they talk with that in the very early beginning, and then respect your technique as well. So there's no firm answer, I guess. It's really case by case.
If you don't mind, I'll make one quick comment, since we still have
Please.
5 people on here. So I'll make it really fast. So the core facilities that I've been involved with are measured on 3 things. Number 1, the number of users and labs that are using the space. Number 2, the revenue we bring in, which can be fee for service or through grants or funding. And number 3 is measure of productivity, which is often publications. And, you know, early career, I wanted my name slapped on everyone that I could that I was involved with, but I would say, you know, be selective as you move along. Number 2 is, so our core facility, we encourage anybody who uses it and publishes to put an acknowledgement on as a minimum. I think that should be a minimum on here. They paid fee for service or not. And then, by the way, then I can go back to my boss, because we've been acknowledged. It can be found in search engines. And then I can go in and say, hey, there was 15, 20 publications this year, and these were the impact and so forth. From authorship, just be selective. Make sure that you put something in it. Every lab is different. Some PIs, you know, will never give it to you no matter how much you're involved in it, but don't worry about it. If you're doing a good job, people will invite you, and then you can make a decision. Minimally, I help them write their method sections if we were doing it for fee for service on here. And so I have this kind of middle position. I always considered myself a collaboratory, so it's not just fee for service. We get involved to make sure you're successful, so I generally get more offers to do that. But don't accept them all. You just have to make sure that the work you understand and you feel you contributed in a good way. Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think we're just over the time, but the discussion was really productive and very engaging. First of all, I want to thank everyone for joining today's session, including our panelists and participants, for the discussion. And also, I want to thank the Plant Postdoc team to work behind this. And if you are not already a member of Plant Postdoc, please try to join, and also send us the idea or the career development a topic you're interested, so we can organize a webinar in future. Thanks, everyone.